Hey guys, so we're going to be looking at lesson 4.7, slope intercept form. So that's on page 33. So make sure you have your notes with you and that you're filling out your notes as we go through this. So what we're looking at is the following graph is of a linear equation, which is equal to y equals 2 over 3x minus 1. Use the graph and points A, B to find the slope and determine where the line crosses the y-axis. So first, we're going to pick the points A and B and label them. Okay, so A, if you look at it, it lines up with -3 and -3. So your x-coordinate is -3, that's the horizontal axis, and your y-coordinate is -3 as well. Your B value lines up with 0, and then along the y-axis, it's 1 down. Okay, so from 0, you're going 1 down, so those are the two coordinates. So what we need to do right now is write them down. So that's point A, and point B is labeled as 0 and -1. So what we want to do when we want to find the slope, we have to label it as x1, y1, x2, y2. And then we're going to use the equation for slope. Slope is always equal to your y2 coordinate minus your y1 coordinate divided by your x2 coordinate minus your x1 coordinate. Okay, so if you put the top into your calculator, you should get -1 plus 3, which is equal to +2. So that's the rise. The run, the bottom number, would be 0 plus 3, which is equal to 3. So that's your slope. So your slope is 2 over 3. So I'm just going to write it over here. Slope is equal to 2 over 3. Now we need to look at where the line crosses the y-axis. So guys, this line right here is your y-axis. So if you look, we can highlight that. We can highlight that the graph goes through the y-axis at -1. So the slope is 2 over 3, the y-axis is -1. So what we want to do is compare your answer from part A with the equation of the line 2 over 3x minus 1. If you look at it, you should notice that this 2 over 3 in front of your x is your slope. And this -1 should match your y-intercept value. So that's where the line crosses the y-axis. This is called your y-intercept. Okay, so it should be the same. So whenever we want to write the equation, we just have to find the slope multiplied by the variable x, and then you either add or subtract the intercept, whatever the intercept is. If it's negative, it's going to be -1. If it was positive, it would have been +1 after the 2 over 3x. Okay, so the graph on the right shows two more linear equations. Use the graph to determine the slope and where the lines cross the y-axis. Okay, so we're going to use the points. So we're going to label them. This point we'll label as point A. This will be point B. This will be point C, and this will be point D, so you guys know which one I'm talking about. Okay, so let's write down point A. So the coordinates of point A, if you line it up to your x-axis, would be -2, and it lines up with your y-axis at 2, +2. Your point B, if you look at it, will line up to 0 on your x-axis and -3 on your y-axis. So then you label them as x1, y1, x2, y2. And then we're going to use our slope equation to determine what the slope is. So it's always your y2 coordinate minus your y1 coordinate over your x2 coordinate minus your x1 coordinate. Okay, so we have -3 take away 2 is going to be -5. 0, 2 negatives becomes a plus, so it's going to be 0 plus 2, which is 2. So that's our slope. So our slope is -5 over 2. And then they want us to find where that AB line crosses the y-axis. So if you look, it crosses the y-axis at -3. It touches the y-axis at the value of -3. So y-intercept equals -3. So we've determined the slope and we've determined where the line crosses the y-axis. Okay, so let's do point CD. So I'm going to write them over here. Point C, along the x-axis, it lines up with -3. Along the y-axis, if you look at it, it connects with -5. Okay, so it's gone down 5 points from that x-axis. Point D, if you look at it, it lines up to +1 along the x-axis and along the y-axis, +3. Or you could say that it's gone 3 up from that +1 x value. And then we label it as x1, y1, x2, y2. Okay, so our y2 value is 3 minus our y1 value is -5 divided by our x2 value, which is 1, take away our x1 value, which is -3. Okay, so at the top we would have 3 plus 5 because two negatives become a positive, and then 1 plus 3. So that's going to be 8 over 4. 8 divided by 4 actually simplifies to +2. So our slope is equal to +2. Our y-intercept is where the graph crosses, that CD graph crosses the y-axis. So if you look, it crosses the y-axis at +1. Okay, and then we can look to see, do they match what we see for the equation? If you look, remember how for AB we said that the slope was -5 over 2, and that's the value in front of x. And then for our y-intercept, we said it was -3, and so that matches with that value that follows. And then for CD, we noticed that the slope was 2, and that's the value in front of our x. And then our y-intercept is the value that we're adding at the very end. Okay, so that makes sense. So we've just confirmed that they match up. So what do we notice? That our slope is always the value in front of x. And we know that the constant, meaning our constant value, the value that follows, is our y-intercept value. Okay, so for this one, it says a linear equation is always the equation in the form y equals mx plus b, where m is always your slope and b is always your y-intercept value. So where the value crosses the y-axis. So this is called slope y-intercept form when we write it like this. So what we want to do is we want to label for question number 1, which of the numbers is the slope and which number is the y-intercept. So 3 is your slope and +2 is your y-intercept. Okay, so we would say slope equals 3. Don't include the variable, just the number in front of it. And our y-intercept is 2. Here, the slope is the value in front of your x, which is -2 over 3. And then your y-intercept value is equal to +7. This one, what's different about C is that you can't have any value in front of y. So what you need to do, if you have anything attached to y, you need to divide it to the other sides. You need to divide everything by that value in front of y to bring it to the other side. You need y alone. It always has to be y by itself equals mx plus b. If it's not in that form, then you will not see the slope and y-intercept values. And then we need to simplify. Simplify is where we can divide this number by 2 and this number by 2 because it's a fraction. So that gives us 4x over 3 plus 1 over 6 is already simplified. So then we can see that the slope is equal to 4 over 3 because that's the number in front of x, and your y-intercept is 1 over 6. Question number 2, it says, consider the equation y equals 2x minus 5. State the slope and y-intercept. The slope is 2. The y-intercept is the value that follows after the 2x, which is negative 5. Now we're going to mark the y-intercept on the grid. So what you're going to do is you're going to find negative 5 along the y-axis. This is your y-axis, always that vertical line. So you're going to mark off negative 5, which is right here. Okay, so there's negative 5. And then what we're going to do is use the y-intercept and the formula for the slope, the rise over the run, to mark off 3 other points on the grid. So we know our slope is 2. So what you need to do is write it as a fraction. Slope is equal to your rise over your run. 2 divided by 1 is still 2. So if you ever have a whole number as your slope, put a 1 underneath it. It still means the same thing, because that tells you your rise. That means you're going up 2, and you're going, for your run, 1 to the right. Okay, so from this y-intercept value, you're going to go up 2 and 1 to the right. Let me fix that. So up 2 and 1 to the right takes you over here. Up 2, 1 to the right, that's your next point. Up 2, 1 to the right, and you can continue on until you get all these points here. So every single time from a point, you're going up 2 and 1 to the right, and that creates a new coordinate on your line. And I can continue that pattern. Up 2, 1 to the right. See, there's my next point. Up 2, 1 to the right. Next point. Now I don't need these kind of lines here. I don't need those ones. Those are not needed. It was just to help me. So you can start doing it with your finger. So up 2, 1 to the right. Up 2, 1 to the right. Up 2, 1 to the right. And then that gives you what your equation should look like. Okay, and then what you're going to do is extend that line, a straight line going through all those points, and you can put arrows on either side because it does continue on forever. Okay, so we've just drawn our equation with all these points here. Okay, so question number 3 is very similar. We're going to state the slope. The slope is equal to 2 over 3. And your y-intercept is the value that follows, which is negative 6. Mark the y-intercept on the grid. So you're going to mark off negative 6 on the y-axis. And then from there, you're going to look at the slope, which is 2 over 3. The top number is your your rise, and that means you're going 2 up. And the bottom number is your run, so you're going 3 to the right. So you're going to follow that pattern again. You're going to go 2 up, 3 to the right, and that's your new point. 2 up, 3 units to the right. 2 up, 3 units to the right, and then that's about it. So once you have that drawn, I don't need these kind of shapes here. So remember, it's 2 up, 3 to the right. And then we're just going to extend a straight line going through all the points to create our linear equation. And I always put arrows on either side. Okay, so that's the idea of the lesson, is being able to now draw a linear graph or a linear equation from a given equation. So if you're given an equation with slope and y-intercept, you should be now able to draw that. Okay, so that's what you want to do. And now you want to practice below. So you want to do all these practice questions. So for question number 1, you should be stating the slope and the y-intercept for each. Then you want to write the equation. So for example, for 2a, you would start by saying y equals your slope times x, and then your y-intercept just follows. Okay, so that's an example. And for each, you're going to state the slope and y-intercept and then graph it, just like we did for example number 2 and 3. So it's similar to what we did for 2 and 3. So that's what you're doing for number 3. Number 4, for each line, state the slope and y-intercept and graph them. So that's it for the homework, okay? So please practice. This is so important for 10C. So if you really want to make your life easier when we start 10C, make sure you practice this. Okay, guys? I will talk to you tomorrow, and then let me know if there's any trouble with this lesson.